I hereby call the November 20, 2023 Planning Commission to order at 6 p.m. Madam Clerk, will you please do a roll call?
Commissioner Glenn,
Here.
Commissioner Allen,
Here.
Commissioner Cohn,
Here.
Commissioner Shane,
Here.
Commissioner McCabe,
Here.
Commissioner Fernandez,
Here.
Commissioner Scoggin is absent today. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Are there any additions or changes to the agenda? Or any objections to approving the agenda as written? Hearing and seeing none, the agenda is approved. Commissioner Glenn, would you please lead us into the pledge? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. On the consent agenda today, we have the regular meeting minutes of October 16th, 2023. Are there any objections to approving the consent agenda as written? Hearing and seeing none, it's approved. Okay, we are on to land use classifications. Resolution 23-38, a resolution of the Matanuska-Susitna Borough Planning Commission recommending approval of an ordinance classifying a portion of 26 North 04 West 31 Delta 002 as reserved land use for the purpose of an emergency service facility. Staff, Lisa Gray, Land Management Agent. Lisa, if you'd like to proceed.
Good evening. My name's Lisa Gray. I'm the land management agent here at the borough, and I'm here for a land classification. The request is to classify a portion of borough-owned land. The property is located on Comsat Road in the Talkeetna area. The fire station in downtown Talkeetna was built in the 80s. It's in the 500-year flood zone, so emergency services is wanting to move it to higher ground. So we looked to see what property the borough owned, and this seemed like a good fit. So they want to move the station eventually next to the Talkeetna warm storage building. The property is 66 acres. A portion of it is south of Comsat Road, and that portion has the Talkeetna transfer station, and then also the trailhead for the Talkeetna Parks, Talkeetna Lake Park. And so this portion that we want to classify is north of Comsat Road, and that piece is approximately 15 acres. And then, like I said, it has the Talkeetna warm storage building located on it right now. Reserving this for a future emergency service site will allow emergency services to apply for grants. Right now, they don't have the funding or design for the building or anything. They're just trying to secure and reserve the land so that they can move forward with applying for grants. I asked them for a timeline. They said they'd hope to maybe construct in 5 years at the earliest. So this is for a project in the future. Public notices were mailed out to landowners within 600 feet. We requested comments from the Talkeetna Community Council, Talkeetna Parks Advisory Committees, Parks and Rec and Trails Advisory Board, Road Service Area, Fire Service Area. I think we mailed out 79 notices. It was advertised in the Frontiersman, posted at the post office. We received one comment, and that's in your packet. And it was from somebody in the adjacent subdivision. They had concerns about the extra traffic, sirens. This fire station is not a high call fire station. They average one call a day. And they're really respectful of the neighbors. When they pull out on them for an emergency out of the station, they don't turn their lights on and sirens right away. They wait till they get down the road. So they would probably be on the Talkeetna spur before they would turn on the sirens or lights. There's an insurance benefit to this location. There's an ISO rating benefit to property owners within a 5-mile radius. Currently, many of the Talkeetna people can't take advantage of that because of the location of the current station and the proximity to the rivers. And so moving it to this location will allow more people to take advantage of that insurance benefit. So I'm just requesting a resolution supporting the classification as reserved land use for a future safety facility. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Are there any questions? Go ahead.
Commissioner Shane, District 4. I'm just curious with the Talkeetna Warm Storage Building right by there. I imagine they've got a well on site in that location. Do we have any idea how good that well is? If they've got, because I know they're for refilling their trucks and everything else, they're going to need to have access to a decent well, I imagine.
Yeah.
Have we looked at that?
To Commissioner Shane, so when the emergency services builds a new fire station, now they're starting to put underground tanks. But the well at the Talkeetna Warm Storage is 101 feet deep, and it has 30 gallons per minute.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. One other question, are there any, it sounds like in that comment, there was a concern about whether or not that would affect their water supply there. Is there any thought? I can't imagine it being an issue, but.
Yeah,
You have
I
any
don't
idea?
know how it would affect that property. In fact, that property is actually on the other end of that subdivision. It's not the adjacent one right next to it. So I don't know underground what the water
Sure.
aquifers like, but the well at the storage site is a good well, it seems like. So
Yeah. Okay. No other questions. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and open public hearing on resolution 23-38. Is there anyone on the phone? Okay. Is there anyone in the audience? Doesn't appear to be. There's no sign-up sheet. Hearing and seeing no other persons to be heard, are there any objections to closing the public hearing? Hearing and seeing none, public hearing is closed. I will now entertain a motion for resolution 23-38.
Planning Commissioner Fernandez here. I move to approve Resolution 23-38.
And Commissioner Glenn, I'll second that.
Okay, Commissioner Fernandez made the motion and Commissioner Glenn second. Are there any discussions? Any amendments? Okay. Hearing and seeing none, is there any objection on resolution 23-38? All right. Hearing and seeing none, the resolution passes. Okay. Kind of feeling this is going to be a quick meeting tonight. What do you think? Everybody's a little concerned about being in a blizzard, I think. We'll go ahead and open audience participation. And still nobody on the phone. Okay. And there's nobody here. So is there any objection to closing audience participation? Hearing and seeing none, audience participation is closed. Okay, moving to public hearing legislative matters. Resolution 23-37, a resolution of the Matanuska-Susitna Borough Planning Commission recommending adoption of the fiscal year 2025 Capital Improvement Program, SIP, with staff Kim Solian, Planning Services Manager. Ms. Solian, will you please come up? And did I say that right?
Yes, Solian is my last name. Thank
Got
you.
it.
I'll I'll say it again, Kim Solian, Planning Services Manager. Thank you all for braving the weather and coming out tonight. Hopefully it will be quick, but I have the opportunity of presenting this year's CIP to you all for recommending the list's approval to the Assembly. So for those of you who are new and maybe aren't familiar with our CIP process, we have had a capital improvement program since 1965. And up until about the 80s, the planning department would solicit nominations from the community and other departments to nominate community infrastructure projects to this list. And then that would be presented to the manager and the Assembly. That would be included in that year's budget. And that's how community infrastructure projects were developed. Somewhere around the 80s, the projects list kind of grew to include projects that aren't within borough powers, primarily road projects. And so then over the next 20 years or so, the project reached at times for a list of 400 projects that didn't have funding and the borough couldn't fund because we didn't have the powers. So last year, Kelsey Anderson, my colleague, revamped the CIP program to make sure that there was a initial criteria that each project that is nominated has to meet. And then she created a scoring matrix so that all the projects that met initial criteria would then go through this matrix. And then that's how we would come up with a prioritized list to present to the Planning Commission and then to the Assembly, and then potentially for inclusion in the annual capital budget. So this year, as part of that process, Kelsey also created, I'm giving you lots of kudos tonight because you're here. The application process to nominate a project is rolling. So at any point in the year, any community member or borough department can nominate an infrastructure project. Because of our borough powers, those are traditionally parks and recreation projects, library projects, park and ride projects for public transit, things that we have the powers to fund and do with our annual budget tax revenue. So the application period is revolving. The application is online, and so anyone can fill that out. Go to the CIP story map or hub site. You can fill that out. But the period between August 1st and August 1st of the following year, that's when we take those nominations and run them first through the scoring or the criteria to make sure the projects meet the minimum criteria. So this year we had 21 applications or nominations for projects. And once we moved those projects through the scoring or the qualification criteria, is it within borough powers? Does it have a useful life more than 5 years? Does it have a cost of over $20,000? And is it not a maintenance or routine maintenance or upgrade project? It's a new project. So once those 21 projects were scored, 17 projects met that initial criteria. We brought together our scoring committee, which is made up of a representative from planning, parks and recreation, emergency services, finance, and public works. And then they met as a team and scored each of the nominated projects on a 10 criteria matrix. And gave each project a score. And then they had to decide, do we present the whole list for inclusion in this year's CIP, or do we prioritize that list? So in our borough code, the CIP has, each year a CIP is approved, it has a 6-year life. And so they picked 9 projects that total about $2.7 million. And the thinking was, if you broke those projects up into a per year over the next 6 years amount, that would be about $500,000 a year to support these community infrastructure projects. So once we got all 17 projects scored, we have an interactive map on our website. We advertised on Facebook and through our website and did direct outreach to community councils and through our planner platform, asking the community to give additional feedback on the projects that were presented as this year's CIP for nomination. That website received about 7,000 hits. So 7,000 individual hits reviewed the website, looked at the CIP, looked at the projects. We had about 87 direct contacts with a project. So how we do it on the borough website is they get to heart a project that they like the best. We also presented at 4 different community councils, giving an update about the CIP, talking about the process, making sure the community understood, how to engage at this point. So as you can see from the list, let me switch to it and I'll kind of give you just a little bit of an overview of the 9 projects that we moved forward for this year's prioritized list. So the number 1 highest scoring project from the internal review committee was an upgrade to the Pioneer Peak Trailhead parking area. Right now it's a tiny little lot, and when in the height of the summer, when there's a lot of people hiking that trail, cars are parked along Connect River Road, and it causes a safety hazard. It also has an old-fashioned outhouse that's hard to maintain and is not up to standard. So this proposal submitted by Land Management and Rec Services would upgrade the parking lot to create an acre-sized parking lot. It would improve the trailhead access, and it would create a vaulted pit toilet that they could maintain. The second highest ranking project, and I won't detail all of the projects because they're in your packet, but the second highest ranking project was the Government Peak Traverse, which is, I think, a super exciting project. Many of you have probably heard of the Alaska Long Trail proposal, that they're proposing like an Appalachian Trail here in Alaska, connecting Seward to Fairbanks, all along a mountain off-road route. And so this project would link Government Peak Recreation Area to Ski Top to 16 Mile, which is the skiing sledding hill that kids use. Before we had Ski Talk, but they still use it, and then on up into the pass. And so that would be a significant piece of the trail that runs through the Mat-Su Borough, helping provide that linkage. So that was number 2. Then there's another trailhead toilet project, the Wiggum Road restroom at the Talkeetna Lakes Park, some upgrades to the Jim Creek campground. Right now, the borough operates a campground at Jim Creek, and it doesn't have water and electrical. And so they're proposing to bring in water and electrical like standard campgrounds have across the state and the country to provide more amenities to campers, and I assume be able to charge a little bit more for those rentals. And then they also want to expand the campground, and that was project number 5. There's upgrades to the Brett Memorial Ice Arena to create a heated maintenance facility addition, because right now all of their maintenance equipment is in a unheated storage container, and it just causes extra wear and tear and is hard on the workers, and they thought that would be a good addition. Settlers Bay Coastal Park. Hopefully you've all been there. It's a beautiful park, and the borough keeps adding to it. So they had additional land donated this year. They're going to pave another trailhead parking lot. They're going to put in a new bathroom, add new trail amenities if they get the funding. And then there's lastly an upgrade to one of the baseball fields at Alcantara, because it's aged out of its useful life and needs new topsoil, and to have the rocks taken out, and then to make some amenities at Lion's Head, or Nut City Adi, which is the trail that goes up Lion's Head, is right now not maintained. And so the borough's proposing to put in a parking lot and create a maintained trail that will enhance access for visitors. So as I said, all of these projects are the top 9 that we picked out of that list of 17. If you approve the resolution tonight, you could change this list, you could pick one. You are not putting a dollar value on these projects. You're just saying the process was followed. It seems like all the boxes were checked. These are good projects, and you're recommending the Assembly approve this list of projects for the 2025 Capital Improvement Program. So if you approve it tonight, the next step is it will present this to the Assembly. They'll also have an option to take projects off this list or put projects on from that list of 17. Once they approve the final list, then the package will be prepared to be presented during the annual budget process. So every year, Public Works manages a capital projects list that the manager then brings to the Assembly. And so all the departments list all the different capital projects needs that they have, and then they work through the deliberation process depending on what our annual revenue is that year for public infrastructure or capital infrastructure. This list would be presented as long-range planning's priorities. And so it'll go through that process, with Public Works, and then the manager and the Assembly will have the opportunity to add some of these projects or all of these projects into next year's budget, or say, okay, over the next 6 years, we're going to allocate so much, and then go down the list funding the number 1, the number 2, the number 3. So that's ideally how it's supposed to work. It has worked that way in the past. And last year, we actually had one of the CIP projects that was funded as part of this process during the annual budget. It's the J. Nolfi Park upgrades. It was a project in Big Lake, and Moki 2 plucked it off the CIP list and added it into the budget. So that's how that worked. It wasn't the top scoring project, but it was a project, so it was valid. I think that's all I have to share for a staff update. I'm here for questions. If you want to review some other aspect of the program in more detail, I'm happy to answer questions or phone my friend over here who knows a lot about the project as well.
Are there any questions? Go ahead.
Commissioner Shane, District 4. I do actually have, I guess I was looking through this list, and there's a decent amount on here that seem like great ideas, things that we definitely need. However, item number 4, the Jim Creek Campground electrical and water upgrades. I don't know how many borough campsites we have, and out of those, how many we have electrical and water hookups, but that sounds like something that would be potentially maintenance heavy and could cost us more on down the road, as well as whether it's more personnel and more maintenance and that kind of thing. I'm not sure I fully agree with that, having that on the list. So I was just kind of curious, do you have any ideas to any other campgrounds that we have, if that's added maintenance or not, or?
Through the chair to Commissioner Shane, I think the borough only has 2 managed campgrounds. Matanuska Lake Park, which is here in Palmer. I think they have water. I don't think they have sewer. And they have bathrooms and showers, but I don't think you can hook up sewer to your campers. So this might be the one, full hookups would be new for us in terms of management, but this project was identified in the Jim Creek Master Plan. Part of the vision for, and I'm speaking on behalf of my friends and land management and rec services, so I'm not totally sure, but there is a larger plan for the Jim Creek area because we have such a large motorized user population, and that is really one of the key playgrounds across the state for motorized users to come. So the vision for that area was to create a large campground, to create a terrain park, and to provide access to the Connect River public use area that was safe, allowing users to recreate in an area that is appropriate, and creating some, with the terrain park, the ability to teach young riders how to ATV safely. So I think the water and sewer upgrades just allows people to stay there longer, to recreate longer. So I think that's why it was part of the plan. But in terms of what it's going to take for the borough to maintain that, we would need to invite land management and rec services to come speak to that part of the plan. I don't have that information.
Okay. I think I would, before I would feel comfortable about saying that I would support everything in here, I would want to hear something on that, or swapping that out for possibly expanding it, which does seem like, I believe, was also on the list at the same cost, because not only that, but it looks like it could be a potential savings as far as maintenance costs, because with it being paved, it's less grading and all of that kind of stuff. So anyway.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, Commissioner Glenn, are they looking at septic on the Jim Creek as well? Septic dump out there, or I didn't see that.
Well, did I say septic? Maybe
I
I
don't-
just said that. I'm sorry. Through the chair to Commissioner Glenn, it might not be, they might be putting in a dump station, but I couldn't say that. I think this does just say electric and water upgrades.
Okay.
Sorry, I don't have the full
And
application.
the water upgrades means to each campsite, or just a load system, or what? Because it's a huge problem getting water for a lot of people. So it's surprising to me. There's one place in Palmer that you can load water right now, potable water, and that's at Midas. They used to do it in back of the Palmer Fire Station. They don't do that anymore. So the only place I know of is Midas. There's nothing at the Butte for loading a camper with potable water or the water delivery guy. He's buying all their water, directly from Midas. So they have a
So-
load facility in the back of the gas or the tire shop over there. So
From the application, it says that they would be, the proposal is to put electrical and water service at the pull-through sites. So not all the sites, just the sites that are larger for the larger campers.
Okay,
But I don't know
thank
how
you.
many sites that means.
yeah.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you. And we'll go ahead and open the public hearing on Resolution 23-7. Has anyone called in yet? Okay. Does he have any questions? No. Just kidding. All right. And of course, there's still nobody here. So hearing and seeing no other persons to be heard, are there any objections to closing public hearing? No objections. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I guess I just want to understand. So if we move forward with this, we're saying that this is what we're going to recommend to the assembly as a whole? Or it sounded like we could possibly
Not yet.
change that?
What we're doing now is the public hearing portion, and then there will be a motion to move this forward, and then we can have discussion at that time.
Okay, great.
Okay?
Thanks.
All right. So hearing and seeing that there's no one else to be heard and still no one's called in. Okay, are there any objections to closing public hearing? Hearing and seeing no objections, public hearing is closed. Okay, I will now entertain a motion for Resolution 23-37.
Through the chair. Commissioner Fernandez here. I move to approve Resolution 23-37.
This is Commissioner Allen, I'll second.
All right, Commissioner Fernandez made the motion and Commissioner Allen seconded the motion for Resolution 23-37. Now I'll open up for discussion.
So I guess excuse me, as I've already mentioned, my only issue is number 4. I don't see, at least until we're able to verify like how much of an expense we're looking at, maybe a little bit more detail on what all is, if there's going to be sewer and all of that, if perhaps the expanded project might be better for the borough as a whole. Like, that's probably my only issue with everything else that's on here. It looks great.
Would you like to make an amendment?
Yeah, I would. I'd like to make an amendment, but I guess I'm just trying to understand exactly how I do that, as far as being able to say, can we look into this more before going forward with it? So that would be my amendment.
Ms. Celine has more comments on that. She has the pricing.
Kim Solian, Planning Services Manager. I just wanted to let you know that particular project for the electrical and water upgrades, the estimated cost is $400,000. And then the estimated cost to expand the campground to phase 2 is $250,000. Just wanted to let you know that. And I think I misspoke when I said sewer. I think it is just water and electrical. I think I so frequently talk about those two together that I just said them together.
So we're talking about like fill stations, just water, no sewer. Okay. Thank you.
Please don't sit down yet.
Go ahead.
This is Commissioner Allen. So I think you indicated though that they would collect fees, right? The borough would collect fees for the services. And do you have any idea, like, do we expect to break even on that? Do we expect to make money on that?
Through the chair to Commissioner Allen, that's a great question. I can't answer that specifically. What I can say from talking to Hugh Leslie, who's the Recreation Services Manager, the 2 campgrounds that the borough operates, are one of the few things the borough does make money on. And so that is one of the reasons why expanding the campgrounds is something that Rec Services is interested in doing, because it is paying for themselves and it's creating a service for the community and it's bringing people here. So it is making money.
Yeah, Commissioner Glenn, so straighten me out here. So it is just a load station. That's the way I'm looking at this for the water, because I don't see it feasible to run pipe water to every campsite out there. It's a pretty big area.
Through the chair to Commissioner Glenn, I haven't been to this campground and I don't have a map of what the sites look like. I apologize. What it says in the application is water service and electrical at the pull-through station or the pull-through campsites, but I don't know how many that is. I don't think it's all of them.
Okay.
But I couldn't say, is it just one, like at state campgrounds where there's one pump site and it serves a few sites, or is it water at each site? I can't say.
Okay. Typical, down south, because we go to RV parks quite a bit, it's around 75 to 100 a night to stay. And that, of course, with the septic, water, and electric hookup. So, and it goes up from there depending on where you're staying. So, but that's a pretty basic cost. So, all right.
Are there any other questions?
I have a quick question for you, Kim. The revenue that's generated from the campsites, do those generally go back into Parks and Rec, or does it go back to the specific campsite, or do we have any idea what happens to those funds?
They go back to Parks and Rec.
Okay.
They go back to Parks and Rec.
General curiosity.
Yeah, so funds are used to operate that department.
Cool. Thank you.
I have
Sure,
one.
again.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, Commissioner Glenn. Do you have any idea how much money we generate out there? How much does the borough make gross? I would like to know that. And I'd like to know on our other parks too, how much we're generating. Are we breaking even, or is this costing us? If we could find that out, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
And I would just like to remind the commissioners that at this time, if you wanted to postpone a decision on this, we could set it to a different date. I'd like to ask Kim if there's a plan on the timeline with this. Is it already headed to the assembly? What's the plan for that?
That is a great question. So in Borough Code, it says that the manager will bring the CIP to the Planning Commission on October 1st. So we're already a little tardy. And then the manager will bring the Planning Commission's recommendation and the CIP to the Assembly by December 1st. We're going to miss that deadline because we don't have an Assembly meeting until the 19th. But I don't know if you're going to have another meeting before the 19th when I need to have the package to them based on what your decision is. So it's very tight. You would have the opportunity, you could come to the assembly meeting and as individuals ask questions, and we could have land management there.
What's the penalty if we don't have this completed in December, or the assembly have it completed in December?
So our budget process has a pretty tight timeline. It starts about December 3rd. Staff are starting to scramble thinking about the next fiscal year's budget with staffing and resources and operational needs. And then we have lots of meetings until April, and then the assembly starts the public hearing roadshow across the borough. So if we don't have our package together, then it doesn't fall in line with the other budget processes that all the other departments have to go through. If the Planning Commission doesn't want to act, you wouldn't make a recommendation to the assembly. So that is also an option, and it would be presented to them without your resolution.
Go ahead.
Commissioner Glenn, tell me again how much this is going to cost for Jim Creek. Dollar figure.
So the planning level estimate for the Jim Creek campground electrical and water upgrade is $400,000. And then the campground expansion is $250,000. So how the estimates are developed is when it's a borough project, and sometimes when it's a community council that's recommending the project, we work with Public Works to get planning level cost estimates, knowing that if you don't have the design, you haven't had the engineering, like prices could go up or down, but we do work with Public Works to help us get a close estimate on what we think the cost would be.
Is the Butte Community Council supportive of that expansion? Do we know that? Because I do not know that.
I'm trying to remember if there was a letter of support. I couldn't speak to that. I will say that the Jim Creek Motorized Master Plan is an approved assembly adopted plan. And that went through a rigorous public process, and I'm sure the Butte Community Council was involved in that. And so that's the community support justification that I can give.
Before you answer or ask, just to let everybody know, we do have a meeting December 4th. So there is some time available. Okay. All right. Go ahead, Commissioner.
So it sounds like you may already know this. Sorry to throw some randoms at you, but so if I'm understanding this correctly, the plan for all of this has already been gone through quite a bit, and this is just, we want to put this one in that we've already talked about. So it's not something new here that we're bringing about. Okay.
Correct.
All right. Thank you.
Through the chair.
Go ahead.
Out of curiosity, knowing that a part of the public process is notifying the public, if we decided to carry forward and postpone to a date certain, would we even be able to meet that December 4th, or do we need to provide notice to the public, or because this is legislative and not quasi-judicial, or the rules different? Things that are going through my mind, because if we're like, we might not be able to until January, right? And then we're in a real, I don't know. Sorry, go ahead.
Are you talking about just advertising your agenda, or?
If we decided to postpone this vote, right, until a date certain, so we're moving it from this agenda, or we're at least taking it from this agenda and putting it on an agenda in a future meeting, is it required based on the substance of this vote, right? Is it necessary to notify the public within a certain amount of time before we actually hold a hearing again to vote on it? Granted, there's no one here, right? Like, I'm not saying it's going to be the issue that brings down the borough, but it's like, where are we at in the process? What does that look like?
Well, your December 4th agenda is already scheduled to be posted for this Friday, and we can make adjustments to it. They haven't sent me a proof yet, and that will get sent to all the community councils. So we're following a public process. The public process for nominations and stuff is all done, so there's not really anything they can do there.
Thank you.
Chair, I have a comment.
Go ahead.
Through the chair, Commissioner McCabe. So I'm still trying to wrap my head around all of this. All these different pockets of money are kind of new to me. And I'm wondering, is there a percentage set for each of these, like CIP, capital projects, road improvement? Or is it like, is our recommendation even considered? I mean, it sounds like last year, possibly the Planning Commission put forward a list to the Assembly, and the Assembly decided to do whatever they wanted. So does it really matter what we think? I mean, I'm leaning toward maybe making no recommendation at this point, just because I don't really understand how these pockets of money are divvied up.
Through the chair to Commissioner McCabe. So the resolution tonight is just approving the list. It is not approving any money. It is not, and there is no money allocated to the capital improvement program that planning manages. The capital projects list that Public Works manages, there's a set amount of money that finance decides we have to do capital projects, and then there's a deliberation process after all the departments nominate their projects. And then we have the road improvement list, the RSAs pay for those projects, and there's a list that's going and a nomination process, and they run that project. But this program doesn't have funding. but it's moved forward with the budget process with the hope. I mean, there is funding available. It's just whether or not the assembly decides these are the priorities and we want to fund them. But in code, we're required to go through the process, get community nominations, get department nominations, bring it to you for approval, and then bring it to the assembly with the hope that these projects will be funded.
So follow up through the chair.
Go ahead.
So they can take none of them or they can take all of them. Is that right? If they have the funding for it and they want to?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Jason?
Through the chair, this is Jason, Development Services Manager. I think many people are kind of going off on what the intent of this. This resolution is not to talk about the funding, where the money's coming from. It's about a list that went out to the community that's already been vetted. It went out, it collected input. It took the input from the departments. All it's doing is a formality process. It's not digging into monies and what costs and how this and that. If we want those information, we can absolutely provide any commissioners with any information as far as what they want for funding, but that is not the point of this resolution that's in front of you tonight.
Do you have something?
I knew it wasn't about funding. It's about the concepts, what is being proposed. And I'm a little bit concerned that the list was compiled only by department folks. I know you had input, but what was the criteria that was used besides this list or this sheet here? Is this the matrix you used to quantify which ones went forward?
So that, through the chair to Commissioner McCabe, the sheet that she just held up was the 10 scoring criteria that each project was vetted by. So the CIP list, and this is how they assigned points based on each of these criteria for each project. So I guess to clarify, the CIP is a tool that the borough uses to solicit community input. So community members nominate projects, but borough departments are also available to nominate projects. The key is, in addition to the other criteria I shared, borough powers, over $20,000, a useful life of more than 5 years, is that it has to be a project that's already been identified in an assembly adopted plan, either a community comprehensive plan or a rec and trails plan or a transportation plan. So all of these projects have shown up in another way, in another plan, and now they're being presented as the priorities for right now. And now I've forgotten the rest of your question, so if you wouldn't mind. Okay.
Can I ask, of the 17 plans that are put forth, how many came from the public?
Let me see. So this is my other, so full disclosure, another staff member ran the CIP but they're no longer with us. And so I wasn't on the scoring committee. I'm presenting this. This year, I actually don't know. I don't know from the documents that I have which projects came from the community. Last year, nearly all of, can I invite Kelsey up?
Yes,
She can
please.
answer that question. Thank you.
Hi, Kelsey Anderson, Planning Services Division. So for context, last year when we revamped the program, we received 5 nominations from community members. 4 of them were valid. And so we didn't actually have, one of the changes we made last year was actually telling the borough departments that the things that you need should maybe be under operations and should maybe be under the capital budget. And so we took them out last year just to try it out, see how it works. So we ended up with 4 community nominated projects. This year, we talked with our community development department and said, did that work out well for you guys? Did you actually receive the funding that you needed? Do you think that it would give you an edge or a better chance of funding through the capital budget if you were a part of the CIP. They said, yes, we think it would help. And so we actually invited them back this year to put their projects into the CIP along with our community nominated projects. I also do not know exactly which is which, how many. I know that probably at least 10 of the 17 were community development projects. They put in a fair amount because they have a lot of projects and they have a lot of need for projects. Recreation services in the borough is huge. And they are also one of the only departments that function in a way that's an enterprise fund where they pay for themselves with a lot of the work that they do. But they're still not really getting a lot of their projects validated through the capital budget. So they wanted to try the CIP to see if that would help. And so that's kind of where we're at now with bringing them back into the process. But I mean, really what we've noticed in the last couple of years is the borough is definitely not doing capital improvement programming right. We're not doing it the way that every other community pretty much in Alaska and definitely the US uses this. So we're having to figure out what works for us. And so we're still trying to figure that out. So there's going to be some differences between last year and this year. There's probably going to be some differences between this year and next, depending on how this goes and how the projects that are in the fiscal year 2025 play out and see what gets funded. So
Of the 17 projects, you think 7 of them came from the community? Is that the way I understood that? 10 of them came from community development?
yeah.
You're unable to tell?
Sorry, I'm with Kim. Like she said, one of our coworkers was like fully in charge of this and is not on our team anymore. So we are both flying with the information that we have to make sure that the program continues to move forward. Luckily enough, he was able to do all of the scoring and getting the booklet together and all that before he took off. But yeah, so we don't know exactly.
The only other thing I would add to that, we received no objections from the community about any of these projects. Every community council got the list. They were invited to comment. We did public presentations at the councils. We put it in Planner platform. We did paid ads on Facebook. We had our website up. Nobody objected to any of these projects or provided any negative comments about any of them. So though I can't say if one of them came, like one of the 9 that we're moving forward came from the community, they didn't have any opposition.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions?
Through the chair, I'm going to address this to Andrew. I'm a Butte guy, and I grew up out there, and we had a train wreck of a mess going in the, out up the Connect River. And the borough came in, put these campsites in. They put a facility in out there, and it has changed big time. I mean, a lot less crime, a lot less vandalism, less garbage getting laid around. And I think it's pretty important that we keep advancing that. And it's a big venue. There'll be 400 or 500 vehicles parked out there on a weekend. So I'm supportive of the Butte deal at the moment. So thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I guess Commissioner Allen, just very quickly. I mean, to be honest, this seems like a pretty non-controversial list to me, and seems like pretty low-hanging fruit. And so I'm in favor of advancing it today. And if as we get into the weeds, as the assembly really does a deep dive and we look at how much things cost, if we have some objections, we can bring it to the assembly at that time. But I think a lot of this stuff is just really common sense stuff that probably should have been done years ago. Thanks.
Any other comments?
Commissioner Fernandez here. I just wanted to reiterate that I think the majority of the Planning Commission members are relatively new, including myself, right? And so there's definitely a portion of this where we're just kind of trying to understand how bureaucracy in this particular fashion and in our roles actually functions and operates, making sure that we're doing our best to protect the interest of the community and make sure that things are done properly, right? So like all of that being said, love the questions. They're very thought-provoking. I served on the planning board for 3 years, and this is my first year on the planning commission. And through the time that I've spent with the various departments within the borough, there is a certain amount of we got to trust, right? We have to trust that, the planning department that produces the information, the research, the documentation to the planning commission to review and then recommend be heard, right? That's what we're doing here, is in an advisory capacity, recommending that these items be heard by the assembly because they are important. I don't know enough, right, about all of the needs of all of the campsites and various areas where CIPs would be applied to understand where the prioritization is. So very much so, I'm trusting that this list was produced in the best and optimal way possible based on the public and based on various community members that know what's important and what needs to be done. Because Commissioner Glenn, to your point, the Butte, absolutely hear you, read you loud and clear. I guarantee you there's about 15 other places exactly like that spread out across the valley. Is one more important than the other? We can really start picking stuff apart as much as we want to in order to feel like we have all the information to be able to vote our full conscience. But ultimately, I just wanted to state on the record, I'm going to take a leap of faith and trust the process, trust that we're working this out in the best and most ethical way with the highest level of integrity, making sure that the public's voices are heard, because that's why I'm here. So thank you. I'll be in favor, in other words. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Commissioner Shane, through the chair. I do understand where you're coming from on the view. I do think that there's a very good likelihood that this upgrade would be really helpful, and I definitely like to trust, but also verify. And so I guess moving forward, the only thing that I would say is that if we're going, as we continue to bring these types of projects forward, if we had perhaps an idea of what added additional operational costs might be, that would probably make me feel a little more at ease as to approving or not approving where we should go with that. So I am hopeful that perhaps the assembly will also take a look at whether or not there will be a large maintenance cost to that, and perhaps you guys could have that information available to them before they go to move forward from there. So,
Go ahead.
Commissioner McCabe, through the chair, I respect how large of an area we have that you all have had to address in trying to figure out how to prioritize projects. I'm not trying to minimize that at all, just so you know. I just, like Commissioner Fernandez said, it's all new, and I just want to understand what we're dealing with. Thanks.
Through the chair, just real quick, I will say that I am a bit disappointed that due to whatever real life circumstances that came up, right? Like, we're behind schedule on this, and now it seems like the Planning Commission is having to bear the weight of the liability of anything that might be missed. Because otherwise, it sounds like we do have some compelling questions, and more time would have been really appreciated. So that part I'm quite disappointed in, though I'm understanding. That's again where the trust comes in, is I'm like, that doesn't feel like it should fall on us and our shoulders behind the 8 ball when this is the first time, really getting into it. So either way, thank you.
Commissioner Glenn?
Commissioner Glenn, the next time that this stuff's brought to us, it would be really great if we had operational costs and what you're bringing in general. I'd like to know what that is and what it's costing to keep these things running. So, because we want to know if we're losing money or breaking even. And, our goal is to break even. This isn't a great profit thing. This is to break even out there. So I appreciate it. And I appreciate your guys' comments. Thank you.
Go
Through
ahead.
the chair, Commissioner McCabe. So am I to understand that when this goes, if it goes to the assembly, they are limited to the list of 17. They cannot draw from anything outside of that list. Is it a binding list?
Through the chair to Commissioner McCabe. So this list of 17 projects that's been prioritized to a list of 9 will make up the fiscal year 2025 capital improvement program. The Assembly has the opportunity to pick projects from wherever on this list or not and move it forward for funding. And they do that annually, but this is a list that brings in community input and brings in those quality of life, rec services, infrastructure needs, and brings it forward from the planning perspective related to, we have 100 different long-range plans and they all recommend different infrastructure needs. So this is a way to implement our comp plans and our long-range plans too, is to bring these infrastructure projects forward. But the Assembly can fund whatever they want, and on list or not. But the process that the borough has is annually to solicit nominations, to get nominations, to run it through a process, and then bring these projects to you to recommend to them, and then we bring it to them, and then the opportunity to fund it is there during the budget cycle.
Go ahead.
The chair, Commissioner McCabe. So does it feel like an exercise in futility?
To be honest, it's difficult. We have so few staff and we have so much need here in the borough in terms of guiding how land could and should be used to support services, to support economic development, to support community needs. So to have a plan that then the work isn't used, the projects aren't funded, it's a challenge and frustrating because there's so much to do. But it is the process that we have, and we hold hope that we're going to grow as a local government and use some of the processes we have in place to make decisions about how we spend our revenue and the infrastructure we bring to the community.
I would just like to read the last therefore of this resolution. It says, now therefore be it further resolved that the MBS Planning Commission hereby recommends that the MBS Assembly allocate or seek funding to support the construction or advancement of the CIP projects identified in the FY25 capital improvement program. So we are saying these projects we're pushing forward. All right. I just want to make that clear. And as a summary, I know the staff is figuring out that this commission has a lot of questions. So I don't believe we are ever going to be the rubber stamp commission. So I would recommend that you think that way when you're bringing these, because we are going to ask the questions. And we sympathize with you in your staffing levels and how hard it is when things happen. You've lost a person. We get that. I will say I agree with what everybody has said. We're not out to get you, but we want to do the best job that we're here to do too. Okay. All right. So with all of that, you have one more thing? Go ahead.
I just have one more thing. Ms. McCabe, you ask some of the most phenomenal questions because I say that because there are some questions that create a domino effect in our minds of other things that we weren't even thinking about. And inefficiency in government is the thing that drives me the most crazy. So that's all I'll say for now. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
And I'm grateful, but thank you. And
are there any other questions? Go ahead.
Through the chair, Commissioner McCabe, the thing that's challenging for me is knowing we have limited resources and we are recommending a list of things. Are we recommending them and putting them up against a list of other things that the money could potentially go for? That's my quandary. Am I going to say, yeah, I agree with this list. I think they're all wonderful ideas. And I think we all love trails, we all love parks, but we have roads that are not up to par. So my priority would be fixing things that drive our economy, which would be infrastructure. And trails are not infrastructure, they are a want. So that's where I have to struggle with my vote. Thanks.
And I'll comment to that, our unfortunate, I had the same feeling, but unfortunately, we do not have road service, road powers, I should say. So even though where we would think that would be someplace maybe better to put the funding, the borough can't. Go ahead.
Commissioner Glenn, at the same time you say that, these, like the Jim Creek Trail, that drives the economy. That's it. I mean, people are buying four-wheelers, they're buying gas, they're buying snacks at the Butte Quick Shop, at the Palmer Quick Shop, am I right?
Yep.
So this stuff's got to be considered too, so.
It's just another chapter of the borough. It's a sip. Okay, any other questions? I almost want to do a button vote on this one because just because. Can we? Nope, then don't. We're good. We're good. I just because the discussion was so good. Sorry, Carol. All right.
Through the chair, we could do a roll call vote, couldn't we? And since, I mean, if the idea was to keep it anonymous because the discussion was so compelling, I mean, either way, our votes were about to be posted.
Typically, if there's no objection, we just approve.
Thank you.
So
Yep.
that was, it was just a thought. All right. So at this point, there is no more discussion. So are there any objections? All right. Well, seeing and hearing no objections, resolution 23-37 passes. Okay. I don't see anything else. Let's go to upcoming Planning Commission agenda items. Jason, do you have anything for us on that?
Nothing, this is Jason Ortiz, nothing more than what has been, what you guys have been provided in the packet. Nothing crazy. It's that time of the year where we're getting light on stuff towards December. So
Okay.
nothing at all.
All right, thanks. And our next meeting is December 4th. So at this time, if there are no objections, we will go ahead and adjourn. Wait, oh, comments. I always forget the comments. Thank you. I'm glad I didn't do that yet. All right, well, we will start down on the left side here. So Commissioner Shane?
To the planning department, great appreciation for what you guys do. I don't mean any disrespect in my questions or anything like that, so I hope it didn't come across that way. And grateful for all of you guys, and that's really all I have to say.
This is Commissioner Allen. As usual, very impressed with the presentation of all three of the members of the staff today. And I understand what it's like to have a teammate leave who was responsible for a particular thing, and then you get asked about it. That's happened to me in my life too. So, but you guys are always so prepared, and I really appreciate the work you do. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Commissioner Fernandez here. Just to say that I'm realizing now too that my primary focus in any conversation, conflict, idea, objective that I have is compassion. It's one of the things that I keep at the very forefront of my mind. And so though I express gratitude to the planning department, which I feel greatly, I hope my fellow commission members know how much I respect and appreciate your input as well. I never say anything to show a reiteration of support from the commission towards the departments in an effort to undermine or chastise the commission members for having these compelling questions. that compassion in me is always at the forefront. And I'm thinking, man, they just got 5 different commission members that were just pounding with questions and didn't really find the peace and understanding that the commission members were looking for, which could be leaving these guys in some uncertainty. But look at all of the work that so that's kind of the path my mind goes down. So I appreciate everyone here. We're all doing the same thing, working on trying to make this borough a better place to work and live. So thank you.
Let me go on this end. Commissioner Glenn?
Yeah, of course, I appreciate both these two showed up at the borough or at the Butte Community Council meeting. When was that? Friday or Thursday? Wednesday? Was it that long ago already? All right, Wednesday. And they did a great job. Was there 3 of you there? Or who is the other girl?
Her name is Lunia. She's a student intern with us from the University of Michigan.
Okay, they did a presentation out there and we appreciate it. And of course, we appreciate you guys. So thanks.
Yes, thank you, ladies, for all of your hard work. And I hope everybody has a really great Thanksgiving.
Okay, Jason?
The one thing I wanted to remind everyone, and this is, and again, you guys have kind of echoed this same sentiment since there's a lot of new planning commissioners, but as a former planning commissioner and sat up here and now switching on reverse roles here, it is very, very, very important to ask a lot of questions like this, like you guys mentioned about rubber stamping. No one in the borough thinks you guys are rubber stamping, but it is so crucial to read your packets and understand what you're doing and prepare these questions or anticipate. Because if you guys do in the future want more people here, you want more questions, we have to be adequately equipped and we have to know that. So if you read this packet and you read through and say, oh, well, most of this is all regarding Title III, regarding the administrative duties of the borough manager, then we can say, well, they might have more questions about this. We're going to bring in land management to answer some questions. We're going to bring in other departments. Finance might be able to come to this meeting tonight. So we could be better prepared because we can't be better prepared if we don't have the questions. So it's really, really important. Read over those things. Remember these legislative matters. You guys can pop in anytime. If you guys want to stop in the borough, if you're in a quick hurry and you just have 30 minutes or an hour, pop into our office. You can ask for Kim or myself or Alex. You guys can ask, you can call in. We can set up a Teams meeting, a video chat, whatever it takes to make you guys, to get you guys all the information, answer questions. I know there was a question that was submitted by Commissioner Shane, I believe, that did submit it, and we did not get to respond to it. So I think it went to Alex, and so I do apologize. He did actually submit a question ahead of time. So, but generally, if you guys pop in or whatever, we're going to be able to be prepared for these types of meetings. So with that, thank you guys for all coming on this crazy weather event night, and happy Thanksgiving as well to all of you.
Thank you. All right, and I would like to say the same. I love meetings like this. I love meetings like this. This makes me feel like we're doing what we've been asked to do. So congratulations on another great meeting. Congratulations, staff, on bringing us the stuff and taking the questions. We appreciate you for doing that. And I too would like to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving, and please drive careful tonight going home. And thank you for coming out in a blizzard. All right. Are there anything else? One more.
Can I ask a question of Jason? If we have a subject coming up that's land management, you tell me why somebody from land management is not here. If we have a subject coming up from transportation, you tell me why the director's not here, or one of your people on the staff. They should automatically be here, the way to my mind.
We can have 10 different staff members here, but that's not economical for the borough to have a staff from everyone. What we do expect is a planning commission to review like your packet ahead of time and let us know if you have questions, because if not, this is a lot of this here is by code, is just pretty much what needs to happen.
Well, this planning commission's going to have questions.
And that's totally fine. Totally fine. But you just need to let us know what you want so we can be prepared, because it could go all over. We might have to have a lot of different people, and we would have to double check, see what the borough manager wants to do. So if he wants directors here or who he wants here, so we have to plan appropriately. We have to know ahead of time. And I totally get you. I've been there. And the question, for those that might not have heard, Commissioner McCabe said sometimes you don't know what questions are until you're on the fly. It happens all the time. And we won't always have all the answers. That's very common. But on legislative matters, you can talk about that ahead of time. You can always ask or phone call. When we don't know ahead of time, we're guessing. We're trying to say, what might they think? And we're just pulling it out and trying to best prepare. And we're not going to have 15 staff members have to take an extra day off and pay overtime for staff members so they can try to attempt to answer that. We try to do that ahead of time. So we're just trying to be most economical, but we can definitely try to answer any questions you have. If you have suggestions or ideas, let us know. Like I said, we have open door policy.
Okay. Last comment then. At 7:11 p.m., this meeting is adjourned.